The lights of Station Orvala burned bright on the day of the bonding ceremony. Thousands of beings from across the galaxy had come to witness the ancient ritual. The Draconith, the great space dragons, would choose their life partners today. Warriors, scholars, and nobles from 100 different species stood in neat rows, hopping to be selected. Tiho was not one of them. He moved through the crowd with a worn bag over his shoulder, picking up dropped coins and forgotten items. At 16 years old, he had learned that ceremonies like this were good for business. Rich aliens always dropped things when they got excited. A fallen credit chip here, a discarded food wrapper with scraps there. It was enough to survive another day. Tiho was human, one of the younger species in the galaxy. Humans had only been traveling among the stars for 300 years. They were considered clever but weak, creative but fragile. No human had ever bonded with a Draconith. The very idea would make most aliens laugh. He pushed through a group of tall, blue-skinned warriors and found a spot near the edge of the ceremonial ground. From here, he could see the dragons. They were beautiful. Each Draconith was the size of a small ship, with scales that shimmered like living metal. Their eyes held the light of distant stars. When they moved, the air itself seemed to bend around them. These were creatures born in the void between galaxies, older than most civilizations. One by one, the young dragons walked among the candidates. They would stop, lower their great heads, and breathe gently upon the chosen one. A bond would form, invisible but unbreakable. The crowd would cheer, and a new dragon rider would be born. Tiho watched as a magnificent red dragon chose a four-armed warrior from the Keth Empire. He watched a golden dragon bond with an elegant scholar from the inner worlds. Each selection brought celebration and joy. But then he noticed something strange. In the far corner of the ceremonial ground, away from the lights and the crowds, sat a single dragon. She was small, much smaller than the others. Her scales were pale, almost white like moonlight that had faded. While other dragons held their heads high, she kept hers low. Around her neck hung a tarnished pendant on a simple chain. No one approached her. No one even looked at her. Tiho heard whispers from the aliens nearby. "The Starless One," a merchant said with disgust, "still trying after all these years." "Cursed," another agreed. "Born without inner flame, a mistake." "This is her 10th ceremony, 10 times rejected by every species in the galaxy. The elders should have ended her suffering long ago." Tiho felt something twist in his chest. He knew what it was like to be unwanted. After the war that killed his parents, he had been passed from shelter to shelter, station to station. No one had wanted to keep a human orphan. Too much trouble, they said, too weak to be useful. He found himself moving toward the pale dragon without thinking. A guard stepped in front of him. Candidates only beyond this point human. "I dropped something," Tiho lied, pointing vaguely toward the dragon. "A credit chip, please, it is all I have." The guard looked at him with pity and stepped aside. "Make it quick, and do not bother the Starless One. She has enough shame already." Tiho walked across the empty space. With each step, he felt the weight of thousands of eyes turning away. No one wanted to watch the failed dragon. No one wanted to remember she existed. Up close, Nari was even more pitiful than he had imagined. Her scales were dull and thin. Her wings lay flat against her body as if she had forgotten how to spread them. Her eyes, when she finally raised her head to look at him, were the color of rain clouds. There was no fire in them, only exhaustion that had lasted centuries. "Hello," Tiho said softly. The dragon blinked. Candidates did not speak to her. They did not even come this close. She waited for him to walk past to pretend he had made a mistake. But Tiho did not move. "My name is Tiho," he said. "What is yours?" For a long moment, the dragon simply stared at him. Then, slowly, she lowered her head until her great eye was level with his face. She was studying him, searching for the trick or the cruelty that must be hiding behind his words. She found none. As they looked at each other, something strange happened. The pendant around her neck began to glow. It was faint, barely visible, like a dying ember given one last breath of air. Tiho saw strange markings on its surface, symbols that seemed to dance in the weak light. Nari noticed it too. Her eyes widened. This had never happened before. But before either of them could understand what it meant, a horn sounded across the ceremonial ground. The ceremony was ending. The chosen dragons and their new partners were being led away. Guards were moving through the crowd, clearing the area. "You must go," a cold voice said. Tiho turned to see a massive Draconith elder approaching. His scales were dark as space, and his eyes burned with ancient fire. He looked at Tiho the way one might look at an insect. "The ceremony is over, human. This one has not been chosen. Again." The elder's voice held no emotion. "She will be taken to the holding pens until the next ceremony, if there is a next ceremony for her." Tiho wanted to argue, but he knew he had no power here. He was just a scrap collector, a nobody. He stepped back as attendants came to lead Nari away. But as the pale dragon passed him, she paused. Her tail brushed against his hand, gentle as a whisper. And in that touch, Tiho felt something he could not explain. A connection, thin as spider silk but real. Then she was gone, disappearing into the lower levels of the station. Tiho stood alone in the empty ceremonial ground. The lights were dimming. The crowds had moved on to their celebrations, but he could not stop thinking about those strange symbols on the pendant. He had seen markings like that before. That night in his tiny room in the station's forgotten corners, Tiho pulled out an old leather journal. It had belonged to his mother. She had been a linguist, a scholar of ancient languages before the war took her. He had never been able to read most of her notes. They were written in scripts he did not understand. But now, as he flipped through the worn pages, his heart began to beat faster. There, on a page near the back, were symbols that matched the ones on the dragon's pendant. His mother had studied them. She had known what they meant. Tiho held the journal close to his chest and made a decision. Tomorrow, he would find the pale dragon again. He would learn what was written on her heart. And maybe, just maybe, he would discover why that pendant had glowed when she looked at him. For 3 days, Tiho searched for the pale dragon. He asked merchants in the lower markets. He bribed guards with the few credits he had saved. He crawled through maintenance tunnels and forgotten passages that most beings did not know existed. Station Orvala was vast, a city floating in space, and finding one unwanted dragon seemed impossible. But Tiho did not give up. He could not explain why. Something pulled him forward, a feeling deep in his bones that he needed to find her. On the 4th day, he found her. Nari was hidden in the deepest part of the station, in a storage area filled with broken machines and discarded cargo. She lay curled in the shadows, her pale scales barely visible in the dim light. She looked smaller than he remembered, as if she was trying to make herself disappear. Tiho approached slowly. He carried a bag with food scraps he had collected from the market levels. Leftover meat, some bread, a few pieces of fruit. It was not much, but it was all he had. "I brought you something," he said softly. Nari raised her head. Her rain-cloud eyes showed surprise, then suspicion, then something that might have been hope. She watched as Tiho placed the food on the ground in front of her. "I do not know what dragons eat," he admitted, "but I thought you might be hungry." For a long moment, Nari did not move. Then slowly, carefully, she lowered her head and began to eat. Her movements were gentle, almost delicate. When she finished, she looked at Tiho with an expression he could not read. He sat down across from her, keeping a respectful distance. "I am going to come back tomorrow," he said, "if that is okay." Nari did not answer. Dragons did not speak with words, but she did not chase him away either. And when Tiho left, he felt her eyes following him until he disappeared into the tunnels. He came back the next day, and the day after that. Each visit he brought food and sat with her in silence. Sometimes he talked about his day, about the scraps he had found, about the strange aliens he had seen. Nari never responded, but she listened. Her eyes would follow his movements, and slowly, day by day, the distance between them grew smaller. "Tiho, what are you doing?" The voice made him jump. He turned to find Woojin standing in the doorway of the storage area. The old mechanic was the closest thing Tiho had to family. He had given Tiho work when no one else would, taught him how to repair machines, let him sleep in the back of his shop when the winters got cold. Woojin looked at Nari with worried eyes. "Boy, do you know what you are playing with?" "She is not dangerous," Tiho said quickly. "She is a Draconith. They are all dangerous." Woojin stepped closer, keeping his eyes on the dragon. "I have been asking around. That one has been rejected at 9 ceremonies across 3 different star systems. 9 times, Tiho. No dragon has ever been rejected that many times." "Maybe the problem is not her. Maybe the problem is everyone else." Woojin sighed. "You sound like your mother." The words hit Tiho harder than expected. He looked away, his hand moving unconsciously to the journal hidden inside his jacket. Woojin noticed. He always noticed everything. "What is that?" "My mother's journal. She studied languages, old ones that nobody uses anymore." Tiho pulled out the journal and opened it to the page with the strange symbols. "These markings, I have seen them before." "Where?" Tiho pointed at Nari, "On her pendant." Woojin looked at the dragon, then at the journal, then back at Tiho. His weathered face showed concern. "Tiho, listen to me carefully. Do not get involved with things you do not understand. The Draconith are ancient and powerful. Their business is not our business." "But what if it is?" Tiho stood up, his voice rising with excitement. "What if this is connected to something? My mother was studying these symbols for a reason. She—" A sound interrupted him, heavy footsteps echoing through the corridor. Woojin grabbed Tiho's arm. "Guards, we need to leave, now." They slipped out through a side passage, just as a group of station security entered the storage area. Through the crack in the wall, Tiho watched them approach Nari with chains and restraints. "What are they doing?" he whispered. Woojin pulled him back. "I told you, the Draconith elders have given up on her. Word is they are taking her away. They say she is a disgrace to their kind." "Taking her where?" Woojin did not answer. His silence said everything. That night Tiho did not sleep. He sat in his tiny room with his mother's journal, studying every page, every note, every symbol. His mother had been brilliant, far smarter than he would ever be. But she had also been careful. She had left clues, breadcrumbs for someone to follow. For hours, Tiho worked. He compared the symbols on the journal page to the ones he remembered from Nari's pendant. He cross-referenced his mother's notes with public databases in the station's library. Slowly, piece by piece, a picture began to form. The symbols were not alien. They were human. Tiho's hands shook as he realized the truth. The markings on Nari's pendant were written in an ancient human script called Hanya. It was a writing system that humans had used thousands of years ago on Earth, before they ever left their home planet. Almost no one remembered it now. It was a dead language, lost to time. But his mother had studied it, and now, using her notes, Tiho could read it. He grabbed a piece of paper and began to translate. Each symbol was difficult, requiring him to check and double-check his mother's work. But slowly, the meaning became clear. The pendant said, "I will wait for the one who reads with the heart. My fire sleeps until kindness wakes it." Tiho sat back, his mind racing. The pendant was not a Draconith artifact. It was human. Someone long ago had written a message in a human language on a dragon's pendant, and that message said she was waiting, waiting for someone who could read it, waiting for someone kind. Nari was not defective, she was not cursed, she was not a mistake. She had been made for a human, for someone exactly like Tiho. He jumped to his feet and ran. Through the corridors, down the elevators, into the deep levels of the station. He had to find her. He had to tell her what he had discovered. But when he reached the storage area, Nari was gone. In her place stood a group of attendants loading empty chains into a transport vessel. And there, directing them with cold efficiency, was the Draconith elder from the ceremony. "Where is she?" Tiho demanded, stepping forward. "Where did you take her?" The elder turned. His ancient eyes showed no emotion. "The Starless One is being transported to the Void Temple. She will be returned to the darkness from which she came. It is a mercy." "No," Tiho shouted. "You do not understand. She is not broken. She is waiting. The pendant, the symbols, they are human words. She was meant for." "Enough!" The elder's voice silenced everything. "You are a child of a young species. You understand nothing of Draconith ways. The Starless One is a failure. She has no inner flame, no partner, no purpose. Her existence is suffering. We are ending it." The elder turned away, dismissing Tiho completely. But Tiho did not leave. Instead, he did something that no human had ever done before. He stepped in front of a Draconith elder, blocking his path. "She is mine," Tiho said, his voice steady despite his fear. "I can read what is written on her heart, and I am claiming her." The elder stopped. For the first time, something flickered in those ancient eyes. Surprise, curiosity, Tiho could not tell. "That," the elder said slowly, "is a very serious claim, human child, one that you will have to prove." Tiho met his gaze without flinching. "Then let me prove it." The news spread across Station Orvala within hours. A human boy was challenging the Draconith elders. He claimed he could bond with the Starless One, the most rejected dragon in galactic history. Most beings laughed at the idea. Some called it the desperate act of a foolish child, but everyone wanted to see what would happen. By morning, the ceremonial ground was packed with spectators. Tiho stood in the center of the arena. He wore his worn clothes and carried nothing but his mother's journal. Around him, thousands of aliens watched from the stands. Their whispers filled the air like buzzing insects. He could feel their doubt, their amusement, their disbelief. On the far side of the arena, Nari was led out by attendants. Her chains clinked with each step. Her pale scales seemed even duller under the harsh lights, and her head hung low with shame. When she saw Tiho standing there, her eyes widened with confusion. The Draconith elder, whose name Tiho had learned was Heejin, stood between them. His dark scales absorbed the light around him. His presence alone made the air feel heavy. "The human has made a claim," Heejin announced, his voice carrying across the entire arena. "He says the Starless One belongs to him. He says he can read what is written on her pendant. This is a serious matter. If he speaks truth, a bond will form. If he lies, he will face the consequences." A cold silence fell over the crowd. Heejin turned to Tiho. "Speak your proof, human child." Tiho's heart pounded in his chest. His hands trembled slightly as he opened his mother's journal. But when he looked at Nari, at her tired eyes and beaten spirit, his fear faded. He had spent his whole life being ignored and dismissed. He knew exactly how she felt. "The pendant," Tiho said, his voice clear and steady. "It is not written in any alien language. It is written in Hanya, an ancient human script from Earth. My mother was a linguist. She studied these symbols. I have translated them." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. A human language on a Draconith artifact. Impossible. Heejin raised one clawed hand for silence. "Continue." Tiho stepped closer to Nari. The attendants moved to stop him, but Heejin waved them back. The great elder wanted to see what would happen. Tiho reached the dragon and gently lifted her pendant. The symbols were exactly as he remembered them. He took a deep breath and began to read. "I will wait for the one who reads with the heart," he spoke slowly, carefully. "My fire sleeps until kindness wakes it." The moment the words left his mouth, the pendant began to glow. Not faintly like before, but brightly, like a small sun trapped in metal. The light spread from the pendant to Nari's scales, tracing patterns across her body like rivers of gold. The crowd gasped. Nari raised her head. For the first time there was something in her eyes besides exhaustion. It was hope, small and fragile but real. The ancient tongue, Heejin breathed, his cold composure cracking for just a moment. He speaks the ancient tongue. Tiho did not understand what was happening, but he knew he could not stop now. He placed his hand on Nari's forehead, just as he had seen bonded riders do during the ceremony. The world exploded into light. Suddenly, Tiho was not in the arena anymore. He was falling through a void filled with stars and memories. Images flashed past him faster than he could understand. He saw Nari as a hatchling, small and hopeful, waiting at her first ceremony. He saw her confusion when no one chose her. He saw ceremony after ceremony, rejection after rejection, century after century of loneliness. He felt her pain, her shame, her growing belief that she truly was broken. Tears streamed down Tiho's face. He wanted to scream that it was not true, that she was not a mistake, but the visions kept coming. Then he saw something else. A woman stood in a place filled with light. She was human, with kind eyes and gentle hands. She wore robes that seemed to shimmer with starlight, and she held a newly forged pendant in her palms. "Someday," the woman whispered, her voice echoing across time and space, "one of my children will find you. He will read your heart. He will wake your fire. Wait for him, little one. Wait for him." The woman leaned forward and placed the pendant around the neck of a small, pale dragon hatchling. Her fingers traced the symbols she had carved into the metal. "Wait for kindness," she said. "It will come." The vision faded, and Tiho found himself back in the arena. His hand was still pressed against Nari's forehead, but something had changed. Nari's scales were no longer pale and dull. They shimmered with deep silver, traced with veins of brilliant gold. Her eyes blazed with inner fire, a fire that had slept for 1,000 years and was finally awake. Her wings spread wide, larger than Tiho had ever imagined, each feather-like scale catching the light like polished mirrors. And in his mind, Tiho felt something new, a presence, warm and vast, filling the empty spaces of his heart. Nari threw back her head and roared. The sound shook the entire station. Glass cracked, metal groaned. Aliens fell to their knees, covering their ears, but Tiho stood still, untouched by the force of her voice. The bond protected him. The bond made them one. When the roar ended, absolute silence filled the arena. Heejin stared at Tiho and Nari with something like awe in his ancient eyes. The other Draconith in attendance lowered their heads, a gesture of respect that Tiho did not understand. "The bond is complete," Heejin said, his voice barely above a whisper. "The Starless One burns at last." The crowd erupted, not in laughter but in shock and disbelief. A human had bonded with a Draconith. A human had awakened a dragon that the entire galaxy had given up on. It was impossible. It was unprecedented. It changed everything. Tiho barely heard them. He was looking at Nari and she was looking at him. In his mind he felt her gratitude, her joy, her fierce and overwhelming love. She had waited so long, endured so much, and finally, someone had read her heart. "Nari," he whispered, speaking her name aloud for the first time. "That is what she called you in the vision, the human woman. She gave you that name." The dragon lowered her great head until her forehead touched his. In that moment, no words were needed. They understood each other completely. "Boy!" Tiho turned. A woman was pushing through the crowd toward him. She was human, with sharp features and quick eyes. Her clothes marked her as a spacer, someone who lived between the stars. "My name is Yuna," she said, stopping just short of the platform. "And I knew your mother." Tiho stiffened. "What?" "Your mother, the linguist. We worked together years ago before the war." Yuna's eyes moved to Nari, to the glowing pendant, to the transformed scales. She found something, something about the Draconith, something important. Yuna pulled a small device from her pocket and projected a map into the air. It showed the galaxy, with 7 points of light marked across different systems. Your mother discovered that the starless one was not unique. There are 6 more like her, 6 more Draconith that were made for humans, each one waiting with a pendant inscribed in human tongues. Yuna's voice dropped low. And there are people who do not want them found. Powerful people. Tiho looked at the map, then at Nari, then back at Yuna. His mind was spinning, trying to process everything that had happened. "Why are you telling me this?" he asked. "Because your mother gave her life trying to protect this secret. Because the Dominion is coming, and when they learn what happened here today, they will hunt you." Yuna met his eyes without flinching. "And because those 6 dragons are still out there, still waiting, still hoping that someone will read their hearts." Tiho felt Nari's presence in his mind, her fire burning steady and true. He felt the weight of his mother's journal in his jacket, filled with secrets yet to be uncovered. He was no longer just a scrap collector. He was a dragon rider, the first human in history, and he had a choice to make. "Tell me everything," he said. Yuna smiled. "That is exactly what your mother would have said." The news spread faster than light. Within days, every corner of the galaxy knew about the human boy who had bonded with a dragon. Messages flooded into Station Orvala from hundreds of worlds. Some were messages of wonder and congratulations, but many more were threats. Tiho learned quickly that not everyone was happy about what he had done. "The Dominion has officially declared you a threat to galactic stability," Yuna said, reading from her data pad. "They are sending a fleet to capture you and Nari. They want to study the bond, figure out how it works, and make sure it never happens again." They were gathered in Wujin's repair shop. The old mechanic had closed his business and covered the windows. Nari was too large to fit inside, so she waited in the loading bay behind the building, her silver scales hidden under tarpaulins. "Who are the Dominion?" Tiho asked. Wujin answered. "A military alliance of the oldest species in the galaxy. They have controlled power for thousands of years. They decide who gets to be strong and who must stay weak. A human with a dragon threatens their entire system." "They are afraid," Yuna added. "Humans are everywhere. We breed fast, adapt quickly, and we never stop reaching for more. If humans can bond with Draconith, the balance of power shifts. The Dominion cannot allow that." Tiho looked at the star map Yuna had shown him. 6 lights still blinked across different systems. 6 dragons waiting for humans to find them. "How long do we have?" he asked. "Maybe a week before the Dominion fleet arrives, but their agents are already on the station. We need to leave tonight." Tiho nodded. He had expected this. Since the bonding, he had felt different, stronger, clearer, more certain of his path. Nari's fire burned inside him now, and it gave him courage he had never known before. "Where do we start?" Yuna pointed to the closest light on the map. "Mining asteroid KV-7 in the outer belt. There is a Draconith there called the Hollow One. The records say he has been imprisoned for 200 years. No inner flame, no partner, rejected by everyone." "Like Nari." "Exactly like Nari. And his pendant matches the same pattern, ancient human script waiting to be read." Wujin stood up slowly. His old joints cracked, but his eyes were sharp. "I am coming with you." Tiho turned to him, surprised. "Wujin, you do not have to. This is dangerous." "I know." The old mechanic pulled open a cabinet and revealed weapons hidden inside. Blasters, armor, equipment that should not have been in a simple repair shop. "I was not always a mechanic, boy. Before the war, I was a soldier. I have been hiding ever since. But your mother saved my life once. I owe her this." Tiho had never asked about Wujin's past. He had always suspected there was more to the old man than he showed. Now he understood. "Thank you," Tiho said. Wujin handed him a small blaster. "Thank me after we survive." That night they escaped Station Orvala on Yuna's ship. It was a fast smuggler vessel, built for running blockades and disappearing into the void. Nari flew alongside them, her silver wings catching starlight as she moved through space like she was born for it. Because she was. For the first time in centuries, Nari was free. Tiho felt her joy through their bond, a fierce and wild happiness that made his heart soar. She dove and rolled through asteroid fields, breathing streams of fire that lit up the darkness. She was no longer the starless one. She was alive. The journey to mining asteroid KV-7 took 4 days. During that time, Tiho studied his mother's journal and learned everything Yuna knew about the other dragons. Your mother believed that 1,000 years ago, a human expedition made first contact with the Draconith. Most of the records were destroyed, but she found fragments. One human woman, a linguist like herself, formed a deep friendship with the dragon mothers. As a gift, the mothers created 7 special eggs, each bound to a human virtue. What virtues? Tiho asked. Kindness, strength, courage, hope, forgiveness, joy, and love. Yuna looked at Nari flying outside the viewport. Each dragon was given a pendant inscribed in a human language, waiting for the right human to read it. Nari was kindness. The hollow one is strength. Why did no one know about this? Because someone wanted it forgotten. The records were erased, the history buried. Your mother spent her life trying to uncover the truth, and when she got too close, Yuna trailed off. Tiho understood. His mother had not died in the war. She had been killed for what she knew. The mining asteroid appeared on their sensors on the 5th day. It was a dark, ugly place, covered in machinery and pollution. Thousands of workers lived there in terrible conditions, digging valuable ore from the rock for corporations that did not care about their lives. And somewhere inside, a dragon waited. They landed in a hidden bay and made their way into the mines. Wujin led the way, his soldier instincts guiding them through the dangerous tunnels. Yuna followed with her weapons ready. Tiho reached out through his bond with Nari, using her senses to search for the other dragon. He found him in the deepest level of the mine. The hollow one was massive, twice Nari's size, with scales that might have been black once but were now gray with neglect. Great scars covered his body from centuries of mistreatment. Chains bound his wings to the ground. His eyes were empty, dead, like stars that had burned out long ago. Around his neck hung a pendant identical to Nari's. Tiho approached slowly. He could feel the dragon's despair, a weight so heavy it made the air hard to breathe. This creature had given up hope long ago. I can read your heart, Tiho said softly. But I cannot bond with you. I already have a partner. You need someone else, someone who embodies what you were made for. The hollow one did not respond. He did not even raise his head. Tiho examined the pendant. The symbols were different from Nari's but written in the same ancient script. He translated them carefully. Strength is not in the flame, but in what you protect. A voice came from behind them. That sounds nice, but who is there left to protect? Tiho turned. A young woman stood in the tunnel entrance. She was thin and dirty, wearing the worn clothes of a mine worker. Her hair was cut short and her hands were rough from years of hard labor, but her eyes were fierce. My name is Minji, she said. The guards told us to stay away from this area, said there was a monster down here, but I have been hearing him cry in the night for 3 years. I had to see for myself. Tiho looked at her, then at the hollow one. An idea formed in his mind. He is not a monster, Tiho said. He is waiting for someone strong enough to wake him. Minji laughed bitterly. I am not strong. I am just a prisoner working off a debt I will never pay. Strength is not about power. It is about what you protect. Tiho stepped aside, revealing the pendant. Can you read this? Minji moved closer, curious despite herself. She squinted at the symbols. That is old writing. My grandmother used to teach it to me before she died. Her voice caught. Where did you get this? It has always been here, waiting for you. Minji reached out and touched the pendant. The moment her fingers met the metal, light exploded through the cavern. The Hollow One raised his head for the first time in 2 centuries. His empty eyes found Minji, and something sparked inside them. Strength, recognition, hope. Read it, Tiho urged. Read what is written on his heart. Minji's lips moved, forming the ancient words. Strength is not in the flame, but in what you protect. The chains shattered. The Hollow One rose, his scales flushing with color, deep bronze traced with lines of crimson. Fire gathered in his throat, not destroying but building, growing, burning away centuries of pain. He roared, and the entire asteroid shook. When the dust settled, Minji stood with her hand pressed against the great dragon's forehead. Tears streamed down her face. She was no longer a prisoner. She was a dragon rider. But there was no time to celebrate. Alarms blared throughout the mine. The Dominion had found them. We need to go, Wujin shouted, weapons ready. Now. They ran through the tunnels as Dominion soldiers poured in behind them. But this time, they were not running alone. 2 dragons burst from the asteroid's surface, silver and bronze, their fire lighting up the void. The Dominion fleet opened fire, but the dragons were faster. Nari and the Hollow One flew together, weaving through the ships, their flames cutting through metal like paper. Tiho and Minji rode on their backs, connected to their partners through bonds that could not be broken. The battle was short and devastating. When it ended, the Dominion commander stared at the wreckage of his fleet and gave new orders. Forget capturing them. Find the remaining pendants and destroy them before more humans wake them. But it was already too late. Across the galaxy, Tiho's message was spreading. Humans everywhere were learning about the waiting dragons, and they were starting to search. The hunt had truly begun. The galaxy was changing. In the months that followed the escape from mining asteroid, Tiho's message reached billions of humans across thousands of worlds. He had broadcast everything, his mother's research, the translations, the truth about the 7 dragons, and humans, scattered across the stars, had listened. They split into 2 teams. Minji and the Hollow One, now named Duri, traveled to the outer colonies. Tiho, Nari, Yuna, and Wujin pursued leads on the remaining dragons closer to the galactic core. The Dominion hunted them at every turn, but the dragons were faster, stronger, and united for the first time in centuries. 3 more dragons were found. On a frozen moon, a retired teacher named Jisoo bonded with a dragon whose pendant read, "Courage despite fear." On a refugee station, a 12-year-old boy named Hanwoo woke a dragon inscribed with hope in darkness. And in a forgotten temple, an old grandmother named Bora touched a pendant that said joy shared freely, and cried as her dragon rose from the dust. Each awakening was different. Each bond was unique, but they all shared one thing in common. Every human who bonded was someone the galaxy had overlooked, someone ordinary, someone who had never expected to matter. Just like Tiho. Now 6 dragons flew together toward the final location on the map. The ancient Draconith archive, hidden in a dead star system, was said to hold all the secrets of dragonkind. It was also where the 7th dragon waited. "The archive is guarded," Heejin said through the communication link. The elder had joined their cause after witnessing the awakenings. His views had changed completely. "The Dominion knows you are coming. They have gathered their full fleet." Tiho sat on Nari's back, looking at the stars ahead. He could feel his partner's fire burning steady in his heart. He could feel the presence of the other 5 dragons and their riders, all connected through bonds that the galaxy had tried to erase. "We are not turning back," Tiho said. "I know," Heejin's voice was almost warm. "That is the human way, always forward, never surrendering. Perhaps that is why the dragon mothers chose your kind." The archive appeared on their sensors, a massive structure built from the bones of dead planets. Around it, Hundreds of Dominion warships waited in formation, their weapons powered up as the dragons approached. "All riders," Yuna called through the link, "this is it. Stay together, protect each other." Tiho reached through his bond to Nari. "Are you ready?" Her answer came not in words but in feeling. Joy, determination, love. She had waited 1,000 years for this. She was ready for anything. The battle began. Dragons dove through the enemy formation like arrows of fire. Nari's silver flames melted through warship armor. Duri, the bronze dragon of strength, shattered engines with his claws. The dragons of courage, hope, and joy flew together, their combined fire creating walls of destruction that no weapon could penetrate. But the Dominion was vast, and their ships were many. For every one destroyed, 2 more took its place. The dragons were strong, but they were getting tired. A missile struck Duri's wing. Minji cried out as her dragon spiraled downward. Wujin's transport took a direct hit and began falling toward the archive. "We cannot win this way," Jisoo shouted. "There are too many." Tiho watched his friends struggling and made a decision. He guided Nari toward the archive itself. The 7th dragon was inside, along with the secrets his mother had died protecting. If they could reach it, maybe there was a chance. They crashed through the archive's outer walls and landed in a vast chamber filled with crystal pillars. Each pillar held records of Draconith history, memories preserved in light. And there, in the center of the chamber, lay the 7th dragon. She was small, smaller even than Nari had been. Her scales were pure white, and her eyes were closed. Around her neck hung a pendant larger than the others, inscribed with symbols that seemed to glow on their own. Tiho slid off Nari's back and approached. He could feel the power radiating from this dragon, an ancient and terrible warmth that made his skin tingle. The pendant's inscription was longer than the others. Tiho translated it slowly, his voice echoing through the chamber. "Love without condition. I am the mother's heart. I am the final gift. I wait for the one who loves without needing to be loved back." As he spoke, the crystal pillars around them lit up. Images appeared in the air, showing the history that had been hidden for so long. 1,000 years ago, a human expedition had found the Draconith. Most of the species had been afraid, hostile, suspicious. But one human woman, a linguist named Sujin, had approached them with nothing but curiosity and kindness. She had learned their language, listened to their stories, and treated them as equals. The dragon mothers had been amazed. This tiny creature, so fragile and short-lived, loved without wanting anything in return. She loved simply because it was in her nature to love. So they had given her a gift, 7 eggs, each bound to a human virtue, 7 dragons that could only bond with humans who embodied those virtues, a promise between species that would last forever. But others had feared this connection. The ancestors of the Dominion had erased the records, scattered the dragons, and tried to destroy the truth. They had almost succeeded. Almost. Tiho looked at the 7th dragon. "I cannot bond with you," he whispered. "I already have Nari, but someone out there can, someone who loves without condition." The dragon opened her eyes. They were gold, like sunrise over an ocean, and filled with ancient wisdom. She looked at Tiho with recognition, as if she had known him for 1,000 years. Then she looked past him, toward the entrance of the chamber. Yuna stood there, bleeding from a wound on her arm, her ship destroyed somewhere outside. But she was not looking at Tiho. She was looking at the dragon with tears streaming down her face. "My grandmother," Yuna whispered. "She told me stories about a dragon who waited for love. I thought they were just stories." "They were true," Tiho said. "They were always true." Yuna walked forward as if in a dream. She had spent her whole life running, fighting, surviving. She had told herself she did not need anyone, did not love anyone, was better off alone. But it was a lie. She had loved deeply and lost deeply. She had protected Tiho because she had loved his mother. She had fought this war because she loved humanity. She loved without needing to be loved back. That was her gift. Her fingers touched the pendant. Light exploded through the archive, brighter than any sun. The seventh dragon rose, her wings unfurling like sails of pure white fire. Her scales shimmered with colors that had no names, and her roar was not destruction but creation. She was the mother's heart, the final gift, love incarnate. Outside, the battle stopped. Every being, alien and human alike, felt the wave of power that swept through space. The Dominion fleet froze, their weapons going silent. The 6 dragons in battle felt their strength renewed, their wounds healing, their fire burning brighter than ever. And then the 7th dragon flew. She did not attack the Dominion fleet. She did not burn or destroy. Instead, she flew among them, her light touching every ship, every soldier, every heart. And in that light they saw themselves. They saw their fears and their cruelty, their selfishness and their pride. They saw what they had become and what they could be. When the light faded, the Dominion commander lowered his head. "We were wrong," he said, his voice broadcast across every channel. "We were wrong about all of it." The war ended not with destruction, but with understanding. Weeks later, a ceremony was held on Station Orvala. All 7 dragon riders stood together, their dragons forming a circle of fire and light behind them. Thousands of beings from every species had come to witness this moment. Hijin stepped forward, representing the Draconith elders. "For 1,000 years we judged these 7 as broken because they would not bond with conquest and power. We did not understand that they were waiting for something better." He bowed his great head toward the humans. "Humanity sees what others cannot. You see worth in the rejected. You see light in the darkness. You see love where others see nothing. The dragon mothers were wise to choose you." Tiho looked at his fellow riders. Minji, the prisoner who became strength. Jisoo, the teacher who found courage. Hanwoo, the child who carried hope. Bora, the grandmother who spread joy. Yuna, the fighter who loved without limits. They were not warriors or nobles or chosen ones. They were ordinary people who had been overlooked their whole lives. And that was exactly why they had been chosen. Nari spoke into Tiho's mind, her voice warm and filled with love. "They called me starless, but you saw my light. That is the human gift. You see what others cannot see." Tiho smiled and placed his hand on her neck. "We see because we have been unseen. We find because we have been lost. We love because we know what it is like to be unloved." That night, statues were raised in the center of Station Orvala. Not statues of warriors or conquerors, but of a young boy offering food to a lonely dragon. Beneath them, an inscription was carved in both Galactic Standard and Ancient Korean. "Power is not in the flame. It is in the hand that offers warmth to those left in the cold." Tiho stood before the statue with Nari beside him. Behind them, the stars stretched out forever, filled with possibilities and adventures yet to come. There were still problems to solve, wounds to heal, and bridges to build between species. But for the first time in his life, Tiho was not alone. He had a family, he had a partner, he had a purpose. And somewhere out there, in the vast darkness between stars, he knew there were others like him. Humans who were lost and lonely, who had been told they were not enough. Humans who were waiting for someone to see their worth. He would find them. He would show them what he had learned. Everyone has fire inside them. Sometimes it just needs kindness to wake it.